A poor woman found him shot and holding his twins. She didn't know he was the Mafia boss. Comment what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The fine rain of a late March Tuesday turns the streets of a working-class Chicago neighborhood into dark mirrors. As Emily Hayes, a 28-year-old nurse from City General Hospital, returns home after a grueling 16-hour shift. The daughter of a seamstress and a construction worker, Emily grew up in the city's tough projects, where she learned early on that life offers no handouts, only opportunities for those brave enough to fight. Having earned her nursing degree through a scholarship and immense sacrifice, she supports her diabetic mother and younger brother, balancing family responsibilities with the dream of one day working in a private hospital, far from the violence and scarcity that define her daily life. That night, while cutting through a dark alley that serves as a shortcut between the bus stop and her house, Emily stumbles upon a scene that will change her life forever. A man, about 35, wearing an expensive but blood-soaked suit, is slumped against a brick wall, holding twin babies who can't be more than 6 months old. Blood seeps from a wound in his abdomen, staining his white linen shirt. While the infants wail desperately in his trembling arms, the man's eyes, an intense blue contrasting with his dark hair, reveal a mix of physical pain and emotional desperation that touches Emily deeply. What she doesn't know is that she is looking at Ethan Cole, one of the most feared and respected men in Chicago's underworld. Heir to a family that controls strategic territories on the city's south and west sides, Ethan has built an empire based on money laundering, smuggling, and political influence, always maintaining a respectable facade as a real estate developer. The twins in his arms, Liam and Olivia, are the children of his ex-wife Isabella, killed 3 days earlier in an attack orchestrated by rivals seeking to hurt him through what he loved most. The bullet wound bleeding in his side is the result of an ambush that same night as he tried to move the children to a safe location. Emily, driven by professional instinct and the compassion that has always defined her, doesn't hesitate to approach. Her trained fingers quickly assess the severity of the wound as her eyes capture every detail of the scene. The man is in shock, his face growing pale, but he still holds the babies securely against his chest. She realizes he is losing consciousness, and that the children, despite their crying, appear physically unharmed. "Please," he whispers in a hoarse voice. "The bullet didn't hit anything vital. But I've lost too much blood. My children, they have no one else. Please take care of them. Don't call the police. They'll kill them to get to me. Please." Emily feels her heart race. All her training screams at her to follow protocol, call an ambulance, contact the authorities. But something in that man's eyes, a desperation so pure and true, and the helpless cries of the babies, touches a part of her that goes beyond reason. She thinks of how many times she has seen street violence take innocent lives, how many mothers have lost children, how many children have been orphaned, and she makes a decision that defies all logic. "Can you walk?" she asks with a firmness that conceals her nervousness. Ethan nods slightly. Emily opens her purse, takes out a clean scarf, and presses it against his wound, instructing him to keep pressure on it. Then carefully, she takes the babies from his arms and cradles them against her own body. They are so small, so fragile, with eyes swollen from crying and expensive clothes that contrast with the surrounding poverty. "My house is 2 blocks away." "You're going to make it," she states, more as an order than a question. The walk to her house feels like an eternity. Ethan stumbles, leaning on walls, while Emily holds the twins and constantly scans their surroundings, fearing someone might see them. The rain is now falling harder, washing away some of the blood, but also making the path slippery and dangerous. When they finally reach the small two-story house with its faded blue paint, Emily nearly weeps with relief. Mrs. Davis is in the living room watching a primetime drama when her daughter walks in carrying two babies, followed by a blood-soaked man who can barely stand. The look of shock lasts only a second before the 58-year-old woman, accustomed to the surprises life in the inner city holds, springs into action. "Mom, I need your help," Emily says quickly. "Boil water. Bring all the clean cloths you have. My first aid kit is in the bathroom cabinet. And please take care of these babies while I treat him." Mrs. Davis, without asking any questions, takes the twins into her arms with the experience of someone who has raised 4 children and begins to calm them with soft lullabies as she moves through the house, following her daughter's instructions. Emily guides Ethan to the sofa, where he finally collapses, consciousness slipping through his fingers like fine sand. The next few hours are a blur of frantic activity. Emily works with the precision of someone who has faced countless emergencies at the hospital. But this time, the pressure is different because she is alone, without a team, without proper equipment, just her hands, her knowledge, and an iron will not to let this man die. She removes the bullet, cleans the wound, sutures it with sterilized sewing thread, and administers antibiotics she kept for emergencies. Ethan groans in pain during the procedure, semi-conscious, murmuring names she doesn't understand. Meanwhile, Mrs. Davis proves to be a natural grandmother to the twins. She prepares bottles with formula Emily keeps for coffee, changes their makeshift diapers made of clean cloths, and rocks Liam and Olivia until they finally fall asleep, exhausted. The small, simple house, which previously housed only 2 women in their predictable routine, now pulses with new and urgent life. When the sun rises, Ethan remains unconscious but stable, breathing regularly, his fever controlled by the fever reducers Emily administered. The twins sleep in a cardboard box, lined with soft blankets, placed next to Mrs. Davis's bed. Emily, who hasn't slept a wink, takes a quick shower and prepares to go to the hospital for another shift, despite the bone-deep exhaustion she feels. "It's going to be okay, Mom," she says, hugging Mrs. Davis before leaving. "If he wakes up, don't let him leave. He's still too weak, and if anyone comes looking, you don't know anything." Mrs. Davis nods, her eyes revealing a wisdom that comes from decades of surviving in a hostile world. "Go to work, my daughter. God put these children in our path for a reason. We'll take care of them and this young man until everything is sorted out." Over the following days, a strange routine settles in the house. Emily works at the hospital, returns exhausted, and takes over the care of Ethan and the babies. Mrs. Davis is tireless, looking after the twins during the day with a love that knows no blood ties. Ethan drifts between consciousness and unconsciousness, fighting the fever and the infection that threatens to take hold despite the care. On the 5th day, he finally awakens completely. He opens his eyes and finds Emily by his side, checking his vital signs with gentle but professional hands. For a moment, he doesn't know where he is, panic seizing him as he doesn't recognize the surroundings. But then he sees the twins sleeping peacefully in a corner, and the memory returns like an avalanche. "My children," he manages to say, his voice hoarse from disuse. "They're fine," Emily replies softly, "fed, clean, and sleeping like angels. You were lucky. The bullet didn't hit any vital organs, but you lost a lot of blood. A few more minutes in that alley, and you wouldn't be here to watch your children grow up." Ethan watches her intently, trying to understand who this woman is who risked everything to save a complete stranger. She is beautiful in a simple, natural way, without makeup or adornments, her dark hair tied back in a practical bun, her brown eyes revealing kindness but also an impressive inner strength. She wears a washed but well-kept nursing uniform, and there is a determination in her posture that he has rarely seen even among the most dangerous men he knows. "Why did you help me?" he asks. "You don't know me. I could have been anyone." "I'm a nurse," Emily answers simply. "I took an oath to care for those in need. Besides, you were holding 2 babies and asking me to look after them. What kind of person would I be if I turned my back on helpless children? You have no idea the risk you took bringing me into your home." "Maybe not," she admits. "But I don't regret it. Now you need to rest and recover. Your children need their father." In the days that follow, Ethan gradually recovers under the attentive care of Emily and Mrs. Davis. He observes the dynamics of this simple household with growing fascination. He has never experienced this kind of familial warmth, this selfless dedication. His life was built on power, fear, and cold transactions. Even his marriage to Isabella, arranged between powerful families, never had the genuine intimacy he sees between mother and daughter in this humble home. Mrs. Davis treats him with a maternal kindness that disarms all his defenses. She prepares nourishing broths, tells stories to the twins, including him in the narrative as if he had always been part of the family, and never, not once, asks about his past or the circumstances that brought him there. It is an unconditional acceptance that Ethan has never known. Emily, for her part, cares for him with professionalism, but also with a tenderness that goes beyond duty. She changes his dressings with gentle hands, adjusts his pillows, sits by his side during the nights when the pain won't let him sleep, and talks about simple things, about patients at the hospital, about childhood memories, about dreams for the future. Ethan finds himself eagerly awaiting these moments, her soft voice becoming his favorite painkiller. As he regains his strength, Ethan begins to help around the house. He rocks the twins to sleep, learns to prepare bottles, and even helps Mrs. Davis in the kitchen. Discovering an unexpected pleasure in domestic activities he had always delegated to staff, there is a peace in this simple routine that contrasts violently with the chaos of his former life. One evening, as Emily is changing his dressing, their eyes meet, and something passes between them, an electric current that both feel but neither dares to name. Her hands tremble slightly as she works, and Ethan feels his heart race in a way that has nothing to do with the physical wound. "You're very good at what you do," he says softly. "The hospital is lucky to have such a dedicated nurse." Emily smiles shyly. "I learned from my mother that caring for others is the purest form of love. She always took care of everyone in the neighborhood, even when we barely had enough to eat. She used to say that sharing hardships makes the burden lighter." "She's an amazing woman," Ethan agrees, thinking of his own mother, who died when he was only 10, leaving him in the care of a violent and ambitious father. "The life I've built is so far from this. Sometimes I wonder if I've made all the wrong decisions." "It's never too late to change your path," Emily replies, her eyes meeting his with intensity. "The decisions of the past don't define who we can be in the future." The moment is broken by Olivia's cry. Emily gets up to tend to the baby, but Ethan stops her with a gesture, rising despite the residual pain. "Let me go. I need to learn how to take care of my daughters on my own." He lifts Olivia into his arms with a tenderness that contrasts with his large, strong hands, marked with scars from a violent life. The baby calms instantly, recognizing her father's touch, and Ethan feels his heart expand with a love so intense it hurts. Emily watches him in that moment, this mysterious and clearly dangerous man holding his daughter with such love, and feels something shift inside her. She is falling in love. She realizes with a mix of terror and excitement for a man she barely knows, who carries secrets that would probably terrify her, but who also shows a capacity for love and change she has rarely seen. The weeks pass, and the intimacy between them grows. Ethan tells stories of his childhood, carefully edited to omit the darkest details, but still revealing a boy who grew up too fast. Forced to make impossible decisions to survive, Emily shares her own struggles, the difficulty of studying while working, of caring for her family and following her dreams, of maintaining hope in a world that constantly tries to crush it. During the early hours, when the twins wake up crying, they work in sync, each instinctively knowing what the other needs. It is in these moments, exhausted but connected, that the barriers finally fall. One night, after putting Liam and Olivia back to sleep, they find themselves very close in the narrow hallway. The air between them is thick with tension, all the unspoken feelings pulsating in the small space. "Emily," Ethan murmurs, his hand reaching for her face with a delicacy that contradicts his raw strength. "I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be putting you in this kind of danger, but I can't imagine leaving." "Then don't go," she replies, her voice just a whisper. "Not yet." The kiss they share is inevitable, a collision of need and repressed desire that ignites them both. Ethan's hands tangle in her hair as he pulls her closer, and Emily melts against him, all rational arguments evaporating in the heat of the moment. It is a kiss that promises everything and nothing at the same time, that acknowledges the obstacles but chooses to ignore them for that perfect, impossible instant. They pull apart, breathless, looking into each other's eyes with a mixture of desire and fear of what this moment means. But before they can speak, the sound of cars screeching to a halt in front of the house freezes them. Male voices, urgent and authoritarian, shatter the quiet of the night. Ethan's face turns pale. "They found out where I am." "Emily, you need to tell me you didn't tell anyone I was here." "I wouldn't," she responds, panic rising in her voice. "Ethan, who are these people? What's happening?" Before he can answer, the front door is kicked in with violent force. Armed men in expensive suits invade the small house like a force of nature. Emily screams and runs to protect the twins, but strong hands grab her. Mrs. Davis appears startled from her room and is also restrained by one of the men. "Boss," one of them says upon seeing Ethan, relieved but also visibly irritated. "We've been looking for you for weeks. We thought you were dead. The territory is at war. We need to go back now." Ethan looks at Emily, seeing the terror and dawning comprehension on her face. In that moment, she understands who he really is, or at least begins to grasp the magnitude of the danger she brought into her home by saving him. "Let them go," Ethan orders, with a voice that brooks no argument, instantly transforming into the feared leader he has always been. "And let them go now, or you'll regret it." The men obey immediately, releasing Emily and Mrs. Davis, but maintaining strategic positions around the house. Ethan approaches Emily, who now looks at him with completely different eyes, seeing not the vulnerable man she cared for, but the dangerous creature he had hidden all this time. "Emily, I have to go. These men work for me. I'm not who you think I am. I'm someone much worse, much more dangerous. And if I stay here, I'll put you and your mother in a danger you don't deserve." "Who are you really?" she asks, her voice trembling. "What do you do, Ethan?" He hesitates, wanting to lie, wanting to protect her from the truth. But after everything she's done for him, he can't dishonor her with falsehoods. "I control territories in this city, businesses that exist outside the law. I'm the person people fear in the dark, Emily. I'm exactly the kind of man you've spent your whole life trying to avoid." The silence that follows is deafening. Emily feels the world spin, all the pieces fitting together in terrible ways. The expensive suit, the bullet wound, the fear of calling the police. It all makes sense in a way she wishes it didn't. And yet, when she looks at the twins sleeping peacefully in the corner, when she remembers all the nights Ethan rocked them with unconditional love, she can't reconcile this dangerous man with the dedicated father she knew. "You need to take your children and leave," she finally says, the words coming out with difficulty. "I can't have this in my life, Ethan. I work to save lives. I can't be involved with someone who takes them." "I understand," Ethan replies, and there is a genuine pain in his eyes that almost makes Emily change her mind. "I'll respect your wishes. But Emily, I need you to know that you saved me in more ways than you can imagine." You and your mother showed me that there is still kindness in this world, that there is still something worth fighting for beyond power and fear. He turns to his men and orders them to prepare the twins for departure. Mrs. Davis, silent until then, approaches with Liam and Olivia already dressed and with a makeshift bag of belongings. Tears stream down the older woman's face as she kisses each baby's forehead, murmuring blessings and promises of protection. The departure of Ethan and the twins leaves a void in the house that seems impossible to fill. Emily spends the following weeks in a state of numbness, performing her duties at the hospital mechanically, returning to a house that now feels too big and too quiet. Mrs. Davis also feels the absence, especially of the children she cared for as if they were her own grandchildren. They don't talk about it, but both feel the loss in different, profound ways. Ethan, back in his world of luxury and violence, finds that he can no longer adapt to the life he always knew. The mansion in Lincoln Park, with its imported furniture and view of the skyline, feels cold and lifeless compared to the small house where he was so welcomed. The twins feel the change too, crying more than usual, refusing to sleep without Mrs. Davis's lullabies, looking for Emily's gentle face. He hires nannies, the best that money can buy, but none of them have the magical touch that Emily and Mrs. Davis possessed. Liam and Olivia remain irritable and unhappy, and Ethan finds himself waking up in the middle of the night, desperately wishing to hear Emily's soft voice calming him, to feel her presence beside him as they cared for the children together. His business also suffers from his distraction. The turf war his men mentioned intensifies, and Ethan has to make increasingly brutal decisions to maintain his position. But every order he gives, every life sacrificed in his name, weighs on his conscience in ways it never did before. Emily changed something fundamental in him, showed him a different life, and now he can't unsee what she revealed. A month after their separation, Emily discovers she is pregnant. The news comes as a shock, although deep down it had always been a possibility since that one night they shared. She sits in the cramped bathroom of her house, staring at the positive test, and feels an overwhelming mix of emotions. Terror for the future, for the difficulty of raising a child alone, for the questions that will inevitably arise. But also, surprisingly, a deep and unexpected joy in knowing that she carries a part of Ethan inside her, a permanent connection to the man she can't forget, despite all the logical reasons to do so. Mrs. Davis, when she finally finds out, shows no judgment or disappointment. Instead, she hugs her daughter tightly and says that every child is a blessing, no matter the circumstances of their conception. The two sit together that night, planning how they will manage, making tight financial calculations, but also allowing themselves to dream about the baby to come. The news eventually reaches Ethan through unexpected channels. One of the men who invaded Emily's house had kept in touch with people in the neighborhood, part of the network of informants Ethan had built over the years. When they tell him that the nurse who saved him is pregnant and that the timing fits perfectly, Ethan feels the floor disappear from under his feet. He has another child on the way, a child conceived in love and not obligation as it was with Isabella. And this child is growing up far from him, without his protection or support. Simultaneously, a new threat emerges. Marcus Thorne, a longtime rival who controls territories on the north side of the city, finds out about Ethan's stay at Emily's house through infiltrated informants. Seeing an opportunity to hit Ethan where he is most vulnerable, Marcus plans an attack not on Ethan himself, but on the people he perceives to be important to his rival. The operation is executed with cruel efficiency. Marcus's men kidnap Mrs. Davis in broad daylight as she is returning from the market. The 58-year-old woman fights bravely, but is overpowered and taken to an unknown location. A message is sent to Ethan, clear in its intentions: "We hear you care about the old woman and her daughter. Come get the mother, or she dies." And then we're coming for the pregnant nurse. Emily discovers the kidnapping when she returns from the hospital and finds her mother's grocery bag abandoned on the sidewalk. Vegetables scattered on the ground, clear signs of a struggle. The terror she feels is paralyzing. She calls the police, but deep down, she knows they won't be able to do anything in time. That's when she receives a call from an unknown number. Emily, it's Ethan's voice, tense and controlled. I know what happened to your mother. I know who took her and where she is. I'm going to bring her back to you, I promise. But I need you to stay home, lock yourself in, and don't open the door for anyone until I call again. Ethan, what's happening? She yells into the phone, all the repressed emotions of the last month exploding at once. Why did they take my mother? What does she have to do with your business? They took her because they know she's important to me, he answers with brutal honesty. Because you spent weeks taking care of me and my children, and my enemies always attack what's important. But Emily, I swear on my children's lives that I will bring your mother back safely. I just need you to trust me one more time. And why should I trust you? She challenges, tears streaming down her face. Because you're so good at saving people. Because your life doesn't leave a trail of destruction wherever it goes. Because I love you, Ethan replies simply, the words coming out with a certainty that surprises them both. Because you changed my life in ways I can't explain. Because I'm expecting a child with you, and even if you never forgive me for what I am, I will spend the rest of my life protecting you and our family. So please, Emily, trust me one last time. The silence that follows is charged with meaning. Emily feels her heart pound at his confession, at the confirmation that he knows about the pregnancy, at the raw vulnerability in his voice. And despite all logic, despite all fear, she finds herself saying, "Bring my mother back, Ethan, and then you and I are going to have a very serious conversation about all of this." The rescue operation Ethan organizes is meticulous and brutal. He gathers his most trusted men, arms them to the teeth, and plans every detail with military precision. But there is a difference in this mission that even his subordinates notice. He isn't doing this just for strategy or retaliation. He's doing it because people he loves are in danger. And that motivation makes him even more dangerous than he normally is. The confrontation takes place in an abandoned warehouse in an industrial district where Marcus is holding Mrs. Davis hostage. Ethan and his men storm the location with devastating force, a brutal shootout that leaves several dead on both sides. Ethan fights with a ferocity that surprises even his veterans, carving a path through Marcus's men until he reaches where Mrs. Davis is being held. The elderly woman, despite the evident terror, has maintained her dignity and courage. When Ethan finds her, she is tied up but defiant, having refused to give any information about her daughter, despite the threats. Ethan unties her personally, his hands trembling slightly as he loosens the ropes that have bruised her wrists. "Mrs. Davis, I am so sorry," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "This should have never happened to you. It's my fault you were dragged into this terrible world." The woman surprises him by touching his face with maternal gentleness. "My daughter is expecting your child," she says softly. "That makes you part of our family, Ethan. And family protects family. You came for me when you could have just hidden. That says more about your character than any mistake from the past." Mrs. Davis's words touch something deep in Ethan, a part of him that yearns for redemption, for acceptance, for a real family. He carries her in his arms to the waiting car, ignoring the new wounds he received during the fight, focused only on returning her safely to Emily. But the operation has consequences that go beyond the rescue. Ethan had to violate agreements with allies, expose strategic positions, and, most significantly, publicly show that he cares about people outside the criminal world. This demonstration of vulnerability marks him as a target not only for enemies like Marcus, but also for members of his own organization who see emotion as weakness. When he finally brings Mrs. Davis back home, Emily runs to hug her mother, checking every inch of her for injuries, crying with relief to find her relatively unharmed. Only after making sure Mrs. Davis is okay does Emily allow herself to look at Ethan, to really look at him. He is different from the last time she saw him. There are new injuries, blood staining his expensive shirt, but there is also a transformation in his eyes. The man before her is no longer the crime boss trying to hide his true nature, nor the vulnerable father she cared for. He is someone in between, someone who is actively struggling with who he is and who he could be. "You're hurt," she says, professional instinct overriding everything else. "Come inside, I need to treat this." "Emily," Ethan begins, but she cuts him off with a gesture. "Later. First, I'll take care of your wounds, and then we'll talk." For real this time, no secrets. As Emily treats Ethan's injuries in the same room where she cared for him months ago, there is a comforting familiarity to the ritual. But there is also a different tension now, a mutual awareness of what is at stake. Mrs. Davis discreetly retreats to her room, giving them privacy. "You know about the baby," Emily finally says, not as a question, but as a statement. "Yes. And I want to be present. I want to be a father to this child. But I understand if you don't want me in your life, Emily. I understand that I'm dangerous, that my presence brings risks you shouldn't have to face." "Do you love me?" she asks directly, echoing the words he said on the phone. "More than I thought it was possible to love someone," Ethan answers without hesitation. "You showed me a life I didn't even know existed, Emily. A life where people care for each other without expecting anything in return, where love isn't a transaction, but a gift. And now that I've seen it, that I've lived it with you, I can't go back to what I was before. But can you leave that life?" she challenges. "Can you really leave it all behind and just be a normal man? A father to our children? A partner to me?" The question hangs in the air between them, heavy with impossibilities and fragile hopes. Ethan knows there is no easy way out of the world he lives in, that men in his position rarely get to retire peacefully. But looking at Emily, gently touching her belly where their child is growing, he feels a determination burning in his chest. "I can try," he says finally. "It won't be easy and it won't be fast, but I will find a way out. A way to build a legitimate life where our children don't have to carry the weight of my sins." Emily feels tears in her eyes, wanting to believe but also afraid to allow herself hope. "And the twins," she asks, "Liam and Olivia, how are they?" "They miss you terribly," Ethan admits with a sad smile. "They cried for weeks after we left. No nanny I've hired can calm them like you and your mother did. I think you've left a mark on them that will last forever." "I want to see them," Emily says impulsively. "If we're going to try to make this work, if we're going to be a family, then I want them here. I want to take care of them again." The joy that lights up Ethan's face is genuine and touching. "I'll get them right now. But Emily, I need to be honest with you about what comes next. My enemies now know you're important to me. There will be more attempts to get to me through you. I can arrange for protection, men who will ensure your safety, but your life will change in ways you might not be prepared for. My life already changed the moment I decided to help you in that alley." She replies with growing conviction. "I have no illusions about what I'm choosing, Ethan, but I also know that true love isn't about choosing the easiest path. It's about choosing the right person and fighting for them despite all the obstacles." In the weeks that follow, a new dynamic is established. Ethan brings Liam and Olivia back to Emily's house, and the children celebrate the reunion with joyful tears and tight hugs. The small house is now crowded 5 people and 2 babies, but somehow feels more complete than ever. Ethan implements discreet but effective security measures. Men positioned strategically in the neighborhood, hidden cameras, planned escape routes. Emily initially rebels against the invasion of privacy, but understands the necessity when Ethan shows her evidence of new threats from rivals seeking to exploit their relationship. In parallel, Ethan begins the complex and dangerous process of detaching himself from his criminal enterprises. He transfers territories to trusted lieutenants, liquidates illicit assets, and invests in legitimate companies that can provide a sustainable income. Every move is carefully calculated not to show weakness, not to create a power vacuum that his enemies could exploit. But there is resistance, especially from his own right-hand man, Leo Vance, who has served Ethan's family for 20 years. Leo sees Emily's influence as a dangerous threat, a distraction that is making Ethan vulnerable. One night he confronts Ethan directly. "You're throwing it all away for a woman," Leo says with evident frustration. "Your father built this empire with blood, and you're dismantling it because of feelings." The other bosses are noticing Ethan. They see weakness. "My father built an empire of fear and death, and he died alone and hated by everyone, including his own son," Ethan replies in a hard but controlled voice. "I don't want that legacy, Leo. I want to be remembered by my children as a present father. I want to die old beside the woman I love. If that's weakness, then I choose to be weak." The conversation marks a point of no return. Leo, realizing he can't change Ethan's decision, begins to make his own plans, in forging alliances that will threaten everything Ethan is trying to build. Meanwhile, Emily faces her own battles. At the hospital, colleagues who discovered her relationship with Ethan treat her with growing suspicion. There are whispers in the hallways, judgmental looks, even a formal investigation into how a public hospital nurse could be involved with a notorious figure from organized crime. Emily has to constantly defend her professional integrity, proving she never used her position to benefit Ethan in any way. The pressure culminates when her direct supervisor, Dr. Anderson, calls her for a private meeting. "Emily, I've known you for years," he says with genuine concern. "You are one of the best nurses I've ever had. But this situation is creating problems I can't ignore. Patients are requesting transfers. Other staff members feel uncomfortable. I need you to understand the difficult position this puts me in." Emily feels the injustice burn in her chest. "I saved the life of a wounded man who was holding 2 babies. I did what any nurse should do. The fact that he has a complicated past doesn't change that he is a human being who deserved medical care." "I'm not questioning your decision to save him," Dr. Anderson replies. "I'm questioning your decision to stay involved with him, to bring that world into your professional life." "Emily, you're pregnant. Think about your child's future." "I am thinking about my child's future," she retorts. "I'm thinking about giving him a complete family, a father who is actively fighting to change, to be better. I'm not going to abandon him because it's hard or because people are judgmental." The conversation does not end well, and Emily leaves the office knowing her position at the hospital is in jeopardy. But instead of feeling despair, she feels a growing clarity about her priorities. Ethan and the children have become her family, and she will fight for them with the same ferocity he showed when rescuing Mrs. Davis. The turning point comes when reliable sources inform Ethan that Leo has planned a massive betrayal, including deals with federal authorities to turn Ethan in exchange for immunity and control of his territories. More alarmingly, the plan includes fabricated evidence that would implicate Emily in criminal activities, destroying her career and possibly sending her to prison. Ethan understands it's time to make definitive choices. He can fight, eliminate Leo and all the traitors, and consolidate his power through violence as he has always done. Or he can choose the path Emily represents, which means sacrificing everything he has built, but gaining the chance for a real, legitimate life. The decision, when finally made, surprises even his closest allies. Ethan arranges a meeting with the FBI, offering full cooperation in exchange for protection for his family and a new start. He provides information on criminal operations, corrupt political connections, and money laundering schemes he has operated for years. It is a betrayal of the code he has lived by his entire life, but also a redemption that only Emily made possible. The process is brutal and humiliating. Ethan is arrested, interrogated for days, every detail of his criminal life exposed under a harsh light. Emily visits him in pre-trial detention, now 7 months pregnant, holding the twins by the hands. The sight of her, faithful despite everything, is what keeps Ethan strong during the most difficult moments. "I could have taken the easy way out," he says through the glass that separates them. "I could have eliminated Leo and everyone who threatened me. But then I would be the same man I always was, and our children would grow up in a world of endless violence. I'd rather spend years in prison and come out knowing they will have a better father." Emily places her hand against the glass, her eyes shining with tears. "I'll wait," she promises. "No matter how long it takes, I'll wait." "You made the bravest decision you could have made, Ethan. You chose family over power. That's more than I could ever ask for." The plea deal he eventually secures is more generous than Ethan expected, partly due to the quality of the information he provided. He receives a 5-year sentence with the possibility of parole in 3 in exchange for testimony against more powerful figures in his criminal network. It's not freedom, but it's a chance. During the time Ethan is in prison, Emily builds the life they imagined together. She gives birth to Sophia, a healthy baby girl with her father's eyes and her mother's determination. Mrs. Davis helps with the 3 children, creating an unconventional but deeply loving family. Emily eventually leaves the city hospital, not due to pressure but by choice, opening a small community clinic where she can serve those most in need without the complicated politics of larger institutions. She visits Ethan religiously, bringing the children whenever allowed. Liam and Olivia grow up knowing their father through visitation glass and limited phone calls, but never doubting his love. Sophia, born while Ethan was in prison, knows her father first through photos and stories, then through visits, where he holds her with hands trembling with emotion. Ethan uses his time in prison productively. He completes business administration courses, learning legitimate skills he can use upon his release. He also spends hours writing letters to Emily and the children, documenting his reflections on change, redemption, and the life they will build together. These letters become precious treasures, evidence of his transformation that Emily carefully guards. Life in prison is not easy. Ethan faces constant threats from other inmates linked to his past victims or rivals seeking revenge. But he survives through a combination of resilience and the strength he draws from knowing Emily and the children are waiting for him. Each visit renews his determination. Each photo of Sophia growing reminds him why it's worth enduring. 3 years later, when Ethan is finally released on parole, he is a fundamentally changed man. The arrogance and violence that once defined him have been replaced by humility and gratitude. He emerges from the prison gates to find Emily waiting, no longer the naive young nurse who saved him, but a strong, confident woman who has built a stable life through sheer determination. Liam and Olivia, now 4 years old, run into his arms shouting "Daddy" with uncontrollable joy. Sophia, aged 3, is shyer, hiding behind Emily's legs, but curious about this man everyone says is her father. Ethan kneels on the ground, tears streaming freely down his face, hugging his children with an intensity that expresses years of longing. Emily watches the reunion with a full heart, seeing the family she chose against all odds finally complete. When Ethan finally stands and approaches her, there's a moment of hesitation, 3 years of separation, creating a distance that needs to be bridged. But then she is in his arms, and everything feels right again, all the pieces finally fitting together. "Welcome home," she whispers against his chest. The life they build after Ethan's release is simple but deeply satisfying. He initially works humble jobs, accepting positions far below his abilities because his criminal record limits his opportunities. But gradually, through hard work and determination, he builds a small, legitimate security consulting firm, using his knowledge of the underworld to help businesses protect themselves without crossing ethical lines. Emily expands her clinic, eventually hiring other professionals and creating a community health center that serves hundreds of families. Mrs. Davis, now the proud grandmother of 3 vibrant children, spends her days looking after her grandkids and sharing stories that keep the family's memory alive. The children grow up in an environment of love and honesty. Ethan never hides his past from them, but frames it as lessons about choices, consequences, and the possibility of redemption. Lorenzo shows an interest in medicine like Emily, Valentina in music, and Sophia in social justice. Each carries parts of their parents, but also their own flourishing individualities. There are challenges, of course. Ethan's parole means regular check-ins with his officer, restrictions on where he can go and what he can do. There are moments when the weight of his past threatens to crush him, when he sees news about the criminal world he left behind and wonders if he made the right choices. But then he looks at Emily, preparing breakfast while singing, at the children playing in the living room, at the simple but true life they have built, and he knows every sacrifice was worth it. One night, 5 years after his release, Ethan and Emily are sitting in the small backyard of their house, watching the stars while the children sleep inside. It is a moment of rare and precious peace, the kind Ethan never imagined possible in his former life. "Do you ever regret it?" Emily asks suddenly. "Everything you gave up, the power you had." Ethan thinks for a moment before answering. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of that life," he admits. "Everything was black and white. Problems were solved with force, without the complexity of normal life. But then I remember the loneliness of that existence, the constant fear, the lack of true connection, and I realize that what I have now with you and our children is worth more than all the power and money I ever had." Emily nestles against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I don't regret anything," she says softly. "Not for a second. Even in the hardest moments, when people judged me, when I had to leave my job, when you were in prison, because all of it brought us here to this perfect moment. They remain that way for hours, connected in comfortable silence, 2 survivors who found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the rubble of broken lives. The stars above shine as silent witnesses to a love that transcended class, past, and social expectations. A love that chose the difficulty of redemption over the ease of conformity. Inside the house, Liam dreams of being a doctor like Emily, Valentina of stages and music, Sophia of changing the world. Mrs. Davis sleeps peacefully, grateful to have lived to see her daughter find true happiness and her grandchildren grow up loved and safe. And somewhere deep in the night, the past finally releases its grip, allowing the future to take its place. The story of Ethan and Emily is not about finding love despite differences, but through them. It is about 2 people willing to fight, not only for each other, but to become better versions of themselves. It is about family built, not by blood or convenience, but by deliberate choice and unwavering commitment. It is about redemption, being not just possible, but achievable when true love is the foundation. And as they sleep that night, intertwined in the bed they share, surrounded by the soft sounds of their children breathing in nearby rooms, they know with absolute certainty that they chose right. The path was hard, the scars deep, but the destination was worth every crooked step they had to take to reach it. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you daily videos that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.